Welcome to Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die, a podcast telling the stories of founders, investors and operators working to turn the world we live in into a better place. Matt Allen, Tractor Ventures, Startmate, ex-AWS. Hey, mate, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cool. So, Matt, we actually have a tradition here at Too Rare to Die where Wallo will open us up with a song that he's prepared specifically just for you. So, here you go.
Yeah. Have you been sung to before?
No, Wallo, this is number one.
I hope I can.
Typical answer, actually. Typical answer.
Yeah. I hope I can make this one special. So, yeah, I will share some music, share some lyrics, so that you can, follow me as I rip along. Yeah. So, okay. So, have a nice beat there. Intro. Yeah, I picked you to be an R&B, oldies R&B guy. So yeah. Take a breath for a minute. Hustling is hard. It's hardest. He ain't taking your business. Can it help you grow? Help you grow. What's the matter? What's the matter? What's the matter? Look for matter. What's the matter? What's the matter? What's the matter? Look for matter. What's the matter? What's the matter? What's the matter? Look for matter. What's the matter? What's the matter? Yeah, hope you enjoyed that. That was my.
Thanks, Wallo.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the matter? Look for matter. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hey, so that's super funny. Before we get into your background, Matt, it's pretty cool. I think you and Lucas were in the exact same role at AWS potentially. Like both in startups, right? Lucas, is that fair?
Yeah, pretty similar. I was a startup account manager, but I know that Matt, maybe you were business development, like similar space working with startups. But yeah, those roles worked really, really close. So that's amazing.
The key differentiator is that I didn't have a dollars attached to my goal, so I was not a sales guy. I was able to put my hand on my heart and say, I'm not here to sell you anything. I just want to help you, build a better business. Where our mate Lucas here had some like you should use more cloud.
Lucas was closing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's it. I open them up and these guys close them. That's exactly right.
That's true.
Nice.
And when I find out about that role, I said, oh man, I really like that, like developing the network, the community of startups. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, one of my favorite things was down here in Australia. I just used to put lunches on for founders. I'm like, cool, like we're not here to sell you anything. I just want you guys to meet each other. And some of the connections that we're able to build in a pure BD, a lot of the time it was just making sure these founders were able to talk to other founders who were, in a similar boat, growing really quickly, shit's breaking all over the place, and that being able to sort of hover around at a high level and connect these founders up, as part of your job. Is like, that's a pretty damn good job. As I've always said, as far as jobs go, it was a pretty damn good job.
Yeah, that's true. True. I totally agree.
That's epic. Stripe we'd had something very similar to Stripe. We had a business dinner once they put on for Stripe Atlas customers, and I'm still super close with a bunch of them, mentoring and helping and as allies, and it's super awesome. Hey Matt, so tell us a little bit about your background. So pretty vast experience set. I mean, what's brought you to where you are today? Where did it all start? Where'd you grow up? Anything you want to tell us? Who's Matt Allen?
So dating myself here, I grew up in using the internet in the 90s, which is right at the beginning. Netscape came out in 93. I was in 10, and I was a bit of a nerd. Had computers at home. My parents, made a bunch of sacrifices to buy us a computer to have at home, which was not normal. In the early 90s, they were bloody expensive for regular folk. but they did that and allowed me to tinker. And mum had this one, which was like, you can have as much computer time as you like, as long as you're not playing games. So I'm like, cool, I'll go do other stuff. So I remember transposing, and I was playing piano, then transposing, sheet music into a MIDI player, and then, literally one note at a time, like put note on, change note type, create chords and creating things like, Funky Town and stuff, from playing in MIDIs on my machine. And also, wrote some code and sort of taught myself to build. So, I'm a self-taught builder. I wouldn't call myself an engineer at all. I'm certainly not qualified to call myself that, but I'm also not that from a sort of a personality perspective as well. I'm a tinkerer. I got a lot of stuff done. And my career has gone through several phases. So, for the first 15 years, I was a software developer, but a self-taught software developer, mostly web. Did a lot of work for a lot of other people, made other people a lot of money. Learned a bunch of stuff along the way, from Web 1.0, where it was all about viewing source and copying and pasting and replicating what you could see on the screen and then modifying it. It's very difficult to do that nowadays with modern technology, modern front end JavaScript technology anyway. So being a software developer, self-taught software developer, a little bit of imposter syndrome, when hanging out with like computer science guys and the ones who fundamentally know the guts of why they're doing this stuff, where I'm just like, well, it kind of worked for me, and moving on to the next thing.
The equivalent of the guys building the metaverse today.
Could have been. The metaverse is probably as shaky as Web 1.0 as it is, in the current state in 2022. And I was always fascinated. I remember, when I was just finished high school, I went and met a guy, off the internet, as you do when you're 19. I drove across to Bondi, and I was living out in the southwest suburbs of Sydney, and he was just an interesting dude, and he was kind of a business guy. And I went, I think I want to be a business person. I didn't really know what that meant, and my folks are certainly not entrepreneurial. They're very, very my dad worked at the water board his whole career. My mum was basically a homemaker, so there was not a lot of influence on how to do business and how to start things from home. But I just wanted to be that. And, being a software developer, just sort of a web developer mostly, sort of allowed me to interact with a lot of business people. And there was a time around sort of 2012, 2013, where I shifted gears from being a software developer, having been a founder a few times, but the technical founder, the one writing the code, to join my friend's technical recruiting company, and sort of wanted to take my mates effectively who are all software developers, because that was, I used to run a bunch of software development meetups and conferences and stuff, and help them with their career progression. So spent 4.5 years as a technical recruiter and built out some pretty large scale software engineering teams for local companies, realestate.com.au and Redbubble and Jetstar and Envato and some of these really high growth, companies here in Melbourne. So moved a family to Melbourne to do that. And after that went to AWS, as we've already touched upon, spent 2.5 years there, and then left there to start my own thing, and here we are. So, there's the 4 phases: sort of software developer, technical recruiter, business development in cloud, and now back to founder again, running a finance company, and being able to help, more and more founders sort of choose the way they fund their company, where especially in Australia, where we're still within kind of cycle number 1 of VC. The first funds aren't even at the end of their life cycle yet, so they're sort of nearly 10 years old. So in Australia, we lag a little bit behind the rest of the world when it comes to the mechanics that founders can use to bring capital into their company. So, it's traditionally, up until the last little while, it's been you're VC funded or you're running off your own steam, and there's nothing in between. And we believe that by creating different options and different types and different shapes of capital to different founders, then people will be able to grow really successful companies, whatever their definition of success is. And hopefully we can help a bunch of them do that, without necessarily putting them on the venture capital path if they don't want to, which we know that not every company is compatible with that, high 100%. Growth, high risk, high reward outcome. Plenty are, but plenty aren't. And the plenty that aren't,
plenty of good companies too.
yeah, really good company and solid companies. These are companies that may not be growing at 200, 300% year on year, but still doing 100%. And given enough time, they still become really impactful businesses. You know, they may their ownership structure might be different. The founders may own the absolute vast majority, if not all of it. And you know, the challenges they face are, you know, it's a bit isolating when you run these companies by yourself. You know, one of the things when you take VC money is you get a bunch of money, but you get a bunch of other founders who are sort of in the similar space. And the challenge when you're running a bootstrap company or a non-VC backed company is like, oh, like, who are my people? Like, where's my community live? Like, who are? There's no common bond. So, Tractor Ventures was born to be able to help lots of different shaped founders build different shaped companies, and you know, they're all still growing. They're all as ambitious as everyone else. They're just choosing a slightly different path. And we're at the end of year. We're at the beginning of year 2 now. So it's been a big 2021. We launched just before Christmas 2020. So we're a year and a bit in, and it's been really a fun ride, and just learning a lot. You know, we thought we were going to build a bit of a slow burn business ourselves. That was not the case. Turns out that you know, so it's called Tractor Ventures, and the opposite of a tractor in our world is a rocket. The VC backed rockets, they're really exciting. They've got these huge missions, but they're very expensive and they're complex and they're prone to blowing up before landing, before completing the mission. We
Unless
believe
your name's Elon Musk.
well, he blew up. He almost tanked
he did blow up
by blowing too many up as well, right? It's actually a perfect analogy.
True. Very true.
Shitload of money, shitload of time, almost ran out because you blew up too many rockets. So tractors in our minds are, consistent, reliable. They're the workhorses. They may not be as exciting to kids dreaming to be an astronaut, but without them, we're all kind of screwed. So we believe that from a technology perspective, the technological tractors are the ones that are servicing their businesses, their business customers who consistently, reliably sort of rely on them to become a critical part of their business, and they just methodically get better.
Yeah. The thing that I found really interesting about Tractor Ventures and what you're up to these days is, as you said, obviously in Australia, it's the venture scene is quite new. There's obviously a handful of angel investors, and that's obviously growing as well. There are some SaaS companies doing the revenue-based financing stuff. We've actually used one of them, and it's been quite successful for us, and we've enjoyed it. But what I like about what you've done, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on why you structured it like this and the value that you think it adds, is you've nearly got the blend of the revenue-based financing, the model, holding off the dilution and so forth, but also the kind of support that you would get from a VC, because yourself, you're a very well-respected guy, like top echelon, and your connections and contacts and your co-founders and so forth. So is that kind of the space you're trying to play in? Like, hold off the VCs and the dilution and so forth, or you maybe just might not have the right business model, and we're here to help, but we'll also give you that key support like you mentioned. Yeah,
look, we're certainly not anti-VC, and the ironically is, our hypothesis when we started Tractor was that of the companies that are able to get RBF from us because they're growing and they've got revenue flow for the company, some of them will just continue to be profitable companies. Some of them will go on to raise capital, and we've just done, in the first 12 months, we've done 2, and I've got 2 more to go. So the people that have backed Tractor, who are all founders themselves or ex-founders or family offices, part of the reason they're here is they're like, cool, so you guys write loans and you make money on the loan. The loans basically run our company. So the revenue from the profit from the loans run our business. And our advisory piece is basically the VC piece. They're all done as warrants or options. So it's basically, we say to the founder, we would like the opportunity to buy into your company at today's price. And for that opportunity, we'll kind of throw the kitchen sink at you. And our definition of kitchen sink is our team, that our full-time team, our team of ex-founders. We've also got 70 shareholders who are all founders and ex-founders who are like, we're happy to help. Like, if someone's got a specific problem, route them our way, and we'll help them. So, we're trying to solve those 2 problems. One is capital that has a certain set of expectations attached to it that's not the same as venture, and as I mentioned earlier, like when you've been head down, bum up, building a company to a couple of $1 million in revenue, and you haven't really been out in startup land, and a lot of them aren't because they're busy building a business, right? And they've managed to get it to millions of dollars in revenue. They're like, they get to this point and they're like, oh, what do I do next? I'm starting to hit this next level of unknowns, and they quite often just sort of get a little bit of like, shit, I need some help, and I don't know how, because you can't take the VC playbook and plop it on a non-venture backed company, right? Because the mechanics of the business aren't shaped the same way. So you need the advice that is the correct shape for the ambition and the capitalization of that particular company. So the VC playbook's not right. The standard boring advisory piece from accountants and lawyers that don't do high growth tech is not right either. And in the middle here is this sort of void of like, well, we've got this business that's growing. We've got this capital that expects growth as well, which allows us to do some more things. But what do we do? How do we do that? That's where we sit. So, that's our little equity play. And when we say little equity, it's 1% to 2%. It's not a lot, but it's at a price that's today, and we've got sort of 5 or 6 years to be able to make that decision as to whether or not we want to actually exercise the option to buy those shares. And the founders, and the founders have the right to, if they don't think we're adding value, they can kind of fire us. So like, we are skin in the game. Let's help.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
100%. So what's a typical, can you share some of the, I know it's early days, but like success stories or like founders that you're working with? What's because a lot of us do know the typical VC software, Web 3.0, crypto, whatever, all the most exciting and evocative words that you can throw around in startup land. That's cool. You see that in, Crunchbase and TechCrunch and all that stuff. Like, what's a typical, who are you working with and who can you help the most?
So the companies are typically, about $1 million ARR as a minimum. Our biggest one's sort of 7 or 8 US. So like, they do scale up. So they've all got revenue flowing through them. But a lot of the time they're actually solving what looks to be a niche problem. And the problem with a lot of venture is that, if it looks to be niche, but it's not, you got to dive pretty deep to sort of understand what this business could look like. And, we all know that the main metric for venture is growth. Like, we need you to be at $100 million plus in revenue in the next 5 or 6 years. And if you can't be, it's opportunity cost. It's like, we're not saying your business is bad, but we're saying this one over here that's more likely to get there is what we need to do. So, one of our customers, one of our portfolios, a company called Sea-Doo, and they monitor outdoor advertising. So, outdoor advertising used to be a sign on the side of the freeway, the big sign, and the time period that sign was up was for a month. And dudes would go out there and they'd take it down, they'd put it back up again, and it's a month. With digital signage, the time period is 6 seconds, rotating through 100 different advertisers, right? So you've got this problem where you've gone, agencies going, righto, Coca-Cola, we're going to put your ad in front of this demographic for this amount of time, blah, 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 blah. And they're just like, okay, how do you measure that? These guys measure that, and they've built a big infrastructure to monitor, measure, and produce those reporting back up to the people who effectively pay for it. And it turns out that, these digital advertising signs are just basically web browsers, and they shit themselves and they break and they don't work, and, all kinds of stuff. And they're also quite often now, because they're digital, they're also looking for other data around it, like how many people walk past that thing and all these other stuff where so like, you think about it and it's complex AF, right? Like you've got to understand the intricacies and complex, but it's also sticky. It's like, once you're in that thing, they're not going anywhere. Like, churn is like 0. This is the unleakiest bucket I've ever seen, and it's growing really quickly. So it's a really interesting thing where Tom, the founder, is just like a bit of a nerd in this space, and he loves it. And he's got a team of 15. They're spread around the world. Another one we've got is a company called Syncio. Synchronized Shopify stores. So quite often, Shopify vendors have a bunch of stores, and they kind of don't talk to each other, and they sort of behind the scenes push and pull things around so that it can move stock around in real time. And like again, that was interesting. They didn't start, mate. So I met Jimmy at Start, mate, and he was just like, "Oof, I don't think I want to be VC backed. I'm not forever, but just not yet. And again, he's got thousands and thousands of customers because he's a Shopify plugin, right? So he's got this massive amount of customers who are all paying whatever, 50 or $100 a month. Some really big names, but he's also like, I'm a Shopify plugin. Like, are Shopify plugins venture back? I don't know, maybe, but right now he's like, I just need to get it to the point, and he's doing millions and millions and millions of dollars a year in revenue. Owned almost entirely by Jimmy himself with a couple of mates that put some money in. So, like anyone would argue that these companies are great companies. They're solid. Their customers love them. They got low churn. They got high growth, or they got high enough growth. So they got high enough growth to sustain, an RBF product. But do they have enough growth to excite, a high growth venture investor that's got opportunity costs in front of them? So we do a bunch of stuff that looks a little like an outlier, and some people might go, they look a little bit, uninteresting. I'm like, maybe, but the thing about, growing at 100% year in year instead of maybe 300% year in year, if time becomes your friend, if you let that compounding go, right? But you can't look at it over a really short lens and go, oh, you're doing 300% year on year for 3 years and we're going to be squillions. It's like, let's just keep going, right? And these guys are all, the way we describe
it's sustainable growth too, It's very sustainable growth, the wheels probably aren't going to fall off, I like to use the analogy at Athyna. We're growing fast, and I like the wheels to be wobbling, but you don't want them to ever come close to coming off, So there's probably less wobble in the wheels, but like you can maintain culture, you have better standards of product development, and like it's probably not as hectic and messy, and less can go wrong, I feel like, which is a major bonus.
I mean, the way we describe our founders is like they're ambitious, but they're also cautious. And they got this layer of frugality, right? Is it like when you're watching, when you don't have a bank account full of millions of dollars, like those constraints breed frustrating constraints on the other side of the coin as well, right? Which is like, shit, I really want to throw some money at something because I know it works, but I don't have any money to throw at them, or I'll get money next month when the bills are paid. Like it's like that constant battle between I want to grow faster, but I don't want to grow too fast. So that I can't. They don't have the luxury of these sort of red brackets at the bottom of the P&L every month. Like you just can't. It's not sustainable to have them for too long because they're going to run out of money, right? So the challenge for founders like that is also that. One of the problems that we need to solve when we deploy, we go and drop $500,000 in someone's bank account, that took their bank account from $100,000 to 600,000. They don't. It's not that they don't know what to do with it. They're just a little bit cautious. Like they're all excited to have a bank account, have to worry about payroll for a little while they sort of deploy it. Is it like that frugality can be a little bit like an hang on a bit too much? It's like, no, you got to use this money. You got to use this money for growth, but it's calculated rather than, VC is effectively like, can we run enough experiments in a short enough time, and hopefully one of them works so that we can run more experiments in a short enough time, raise more money so that we can run more experiments. And that's not really the mechanic these people get to work with.
VC money, I heard a stat the other day. I don't know if the stat was true or not, but it was about, I think in the last 2 years or 24 months or whatever, I think 60% of VC money goes to Google and Facebook. Which sounds pretty reasonable to me, because really it's like a land grab. Like we don't really care what the CAC is. We don't really care what the, cost per click is or whatever. Like we just want bulk clients to take over, market share in the industry, and then we'll figure all the rest of the stuff out. Whereas I actually love revenue-based financing. As I said, we use it, We're not obviously a tractor portfolio company, but we use it, and it's been phenomenal for us. And we're at the stage where our strategy is looking like raising, towards the early to mid this year. And that's what works for us. The thing that I really liked about what you said is, you mentioned Jimmy, I think, the founder that you talked about, and you said he went through StartMate, they've got great traction, and they might raise VC money, but maybe just not yet. It's that flexibility that you buy. And what Jimmy will have learnt is like have a little bit of money come in, but you have to be scrappy, you have to be frugal, go and raise, and you've got that skill of how to be profitable, how to be frugal, how to spend a dollar well, I think they're like key. I find like some of there's some players in the space that we're entering, like that are, I see some of these stories of founding to unicorn in 12 months or 18 months or whatever, and it's like pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, or whatever. I think I skipped Series C, but like I feel like giving away all of your equity, taking on so much capital, I don't feel like you build the foundations of a smart, well-run, founder-led business, or you give a lot of that away straight away. And yeah, like everyone wants to be a unicorn, and that's a success for a fund, that's a success for a founder, but like it's not a zero-sum like fastest to $1 billion game. Like business is also a long-term play. You're trying to build something that will sustain and will last and will be great long into the future. And I feel like what you do buys people that ability in a much smarter way.
One of the words we love is optionality, right? So the minute that those people you described about like strapping on that rocket so quickly, like at no point in time can they go, it looks like we've got a really good, at no point in time can they slow down. Right, like you can't launch the rocket and go, change my mind. I'll just land it over here and turn into a tractor, right? Like that, you cannot do that without. I mean, you can do it, but you're gonna have some very disappointed investors, right? Because you've basically sold this massive dream, and everyone's backed that dream, and you just don't have that choice. Now that's okay. Like it's okay for some people to go. We are absolutely burning this capital like crazy so that we can acquire all the things, so that we can, we'll figure out, as you said, some of the unit metrics and make sure this thing can actually be a solid business down the track. It's like when you do that, if you do that up front, if you know that works, and the problem with that is it's a constant variable, right? Like it's not the same, your CAC and your LTVs is changing all the time, especially if you are throwing money at ads. Like that shit is not whatever you bought a customer for last month doesn't mean you can get it for this month, right? So you need to be on top of all those mechanics on how it all works. But optionality, so at some point in time, the interesting thing here is that, and something that drives me is like founder wealth. Like, so these founders have put years and years and years into their company, and they've got investors, right? Where they got, they might have no investors, they might have some angel investors, and then they take VC investors, right? So the problem, the thing that founders really need to be conscious of is that, the business model of the money you take dictates your definition of success once you take it, right? So you've taken RBF, we've taken RBF. RBF, the business pays for the loan and the interest, and the long-term value is retained by the shareholders, right? Because you haven't sold any shares, or you may have given a little bit of them to us, but we've worked for them and earned them. But the short answer is that, you've taken our RBF loan and given us 1%. Otherwise, you would have sold 25% to the investors for a similar amount of money or a fraction thereof, right?
Yeah.
With equity, you don't have to, the company doesn't pay for it, the founder pays for it, and they pay for it later. And they usually pay for it in an order of magnitude, right? Yes, they've made a shitload of money too, but the people have also made a shitload. That's the business model, right? The business model is RBF says, we'll give you this $500,000. You're going to give us back 750 over the next couple of years. But you get to retain all the value you used to create that. VC is, we'll give you 500 grand and it'll give us 10% of your company. And then you don't have to pay us back. But when you do pay us back, it's going to be 5 million or 50 million.
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to get a lot too, but it's likely the founder's portion is going to go down and down over time. Hopefully the value is going up and up and up. And it's just like, once you've set that rocket in motion, it's really hard to sort of go, record scratch, come back. Actually, I want to do this over here now. It's just very rare you get to pull that shit off, especially if you're too far down the thing. So, my conversation we have with founders all day long is that, like, if you take this, others have capital, are you absolutely sure that that's the life you want to live, that's the expectations that you're going to deliver? If your answer is I'm not sure, then maybe you can delay the conversation for 12 months as you grow the business and you get a little bit more confidence. Or at the end of that 12 months, you've still got the optionality to go, actually, I've spent this money, I've grown the business, but it was still at a sustainable rather than rocket pace. I still think that if I take the rocket money, I'm not 100% sure, I'm not sure enough that we'll achieve the growth that the money expects. And, you know, the challenge you've got in startup land is that most startups don't die because they can't raise money. They die because they can't raise more money, right? So it's like, you got the first one away, excellent story. There's no numbers. Everyone's like, yep, you guys are fucking tops. Go for it.
Heaps of PR.
Heaps of PR. You know, you sold
the
dream. You sold the dream. You got no numbers. And at some point in time, people are like, yeah, well, show me the numbers. And if the numbers aren't where they need to be, that's where people are just like, whoa, you know, the opportunity cost for the investors come along and go, you know, like this other one over here that's doing 400x and you're doing 100x, you know, like that's not really, you know, that's not where I'm at. So I just think that, you know, there's not a lot of businesses that can actually, no matter how much money you throw at it, can grow. Like, so Sea-Doo, it's very difficult to grow any quicker than the industry allows it to grow, right? You know, they've got enterprise sales, they've got these slow moving customers, but when they go, yep, we're in, there's like step change in revenue, you know, like sticky long-term contracts, all this kind of stuff. It's like VC is like, oh, that's a bit slow and boring, isn't it? You're like, I don't know, you know, like a multi-million, multi-year contract, slow and boring. I don't think so, but you might, you know.
Yeah. 100%. I love it. I think it just provides, like you said, an option for founders to control their destiny a little bit more. Really is the key, you know. And if you want to be on that rocket ship, you want to take the blue pill, fine. You want to take the red pill, you know, we got that over here too. So. And it's just great to see something more bespoke in Australia, you know, to like have a support mechanism that you guys would provide. It's it's rad. Hey, I want to move to like, I guess more of your putting your advisory and your investor hat on in some of the StartMate stuff. You know, your investor in, you know, Mr. Yum and Linktree and some of these really exciting startups. Spaceship as well. I'm a spaceship user. Love Spaceship, except it's been plummeting through the floor at the moment. And every day, me and my partner wake up, we check it. We're not happy, but that's tech stocks at the moment. And you know, nothing against Spaceship. It's just, but Matt, I wanted to ask. So in your you know, history as an advisor and an investor and an angel and so forth, what are some of the best startups have in common? Is there any threads that you can kind of point out that's like, I love seeing that. That will normally be a key indicator of future success.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I get older, I realize that, you know, a lot of founders and companies, therefore, but founders specifically, almost live in two diametrically opposed states at any point in time. Like they are extremely confident about some things and extremely not confident about other things, and the balance between the two shifts over time. So, you know, and the confidence on the, you know, the things they're not confident on, their ability to you know, run egoless experiments, you know. And one thing we talk about at Tractor a lot internally is like, even though Tractor is sort of built off my idea, is like, I don't have monopoly on anything. Like I try and leave my ego at the door every day, and if someone comes up with a better anything, let's do it. You know, we were talking this week in our strategy stuff about, you know, really sort of tightening in our vision and mission, and like I put my version up, but like if someone else got a better version, so be it. So I think founders who are open, you know, it's almost that like strong opinions loosely held, right? And I think people get in trouble when they have the strong opinion strongly held, right? Like a strong, and there's like they're getting new information's coming in, and they're not even able to respond to it, you know, like not having a mindset where they go, you know, it's clear to me that this new information dictates that what we're doing is not working. And that can be a challenge, right? And that can manifest in lots of different ways about behavioral traits of founders, you know, response to questioning. You know, I like founders that when you question them, it's not an attack. Like it's like, you know, you're coming with best intent.
Thank you for coming at it from the other angle and highlighting something for me.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, like,
me learn.
as an advisor, my job is to kind of just ask questions. I've probably got an opinion, but it's not necessarily to dump it on them. It's to sort of ask enough questions so that, they answer their own question. It could be that they land where mine landed, or the questioning itself took them on a different journey. So I think that the ability to sort of listen and also like trust, I think that's a real killer. Like founders that don't trust their people, like don't trust their employees. I think more startups die because founders can't let go of stuff, rather than the opposite, where they're not interested and they're like too much a founder in the weed. That governing factor of growth is quite often, especially early, is a founder in the weeds that can't get themselves out. That can't bring themselves to the abstraction layer that a founder CEO needs to be. Now, obviously, when it's two people, you've got a shitload of stuff to do. But at a certain point in time, my team's 14 now, and I'm basically come to the conclusion that everybody can do sort of one or two things well, and we just pay the other people to do their one or two things well, and that's it, right? It's when people are doing 10 things in a shitty way, and the founder's also doing 10 things, and 8 of them are like substandard, and they're not being delivered on, and they're taking too long, and whatever. It's like, if you can't solve, like, the problem as a founder to solve is almost like that you got to solve your own problem first. Like you need to identify that you're doing this shit that I'm not good at, and I need to to do that, you need to be able to say I'm not good at a whole bunch of shit. And like, I think that's an ego thing, right? If you can move that to the side and go, my default position is that I'm shit at most things, and I'm good at a couple of things. And I say to my whole crew, is like, you're probably shit at most things, but you're good at a couple of things. And if you find yourself,
that's not offensive. That's not offensive either. It's just a human being.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. Like, it's because like a lot of people will dwell on the, hey, he just said I was shit at a bunch of stuff, but actually, they should be going, actually no. But the two things that I'm really good at are the things that when I'm doing those things, it's effortless. Like, it's just like everybody's moving and everyone's in sync. And it feels fucking great. It's when, and I know when I get out of my lane. And for me, I'm not a details guy. Ironically, it's 15 years as a software developer, where software is all about details. I'm not a details
Self-taught
guy.
software developer. Self-taught.
I taught myself enough to get the job done, and enough for people to make a lot of money off it, but not enough to be. I never thought of it as my craft. And I think a lot of founders, believe everything is their craft, and it's funny. I hear founders talk about, oh, this startup's my baby. And I'm like, oh, like, you're gonna have to do some nasty shit to that baby. Like, you're gonna have to,
you might have to kill that baby.
You might have to slap it around a little bit.
You might have to blow your baby up.
Exactly right.
Sell your baby to someone else.
You're like, and your baby's ugly. Sorry.
Someone might fuck your baby. That last one went too far.
Too far. And I think it's a fascinating thing, and it's something that I reflect on a lot as a I've founded several companies before. I see Tractor as, and I actually asked this on Twitter the other day. It's like, can you build a really successful company when you're not, so emotional that this thing's my baby, and you're so wrapped up in this thing, and I feel like I'm rational about this stuff. Like, I know we know what we need to do. I know where our gaps are. I know what success looks like, and I know I've got a fairly good plan that a lot of people have backed me to go and execute on. But I'm not. This is not my baby. This is not like, if someone comes in and says that's fucking stupid, I'm like, cool, tell me why. A lot of founders would run the other direction and go, no, it's not. It's great. I'm like, are you sure? So I think 100%. That coming back to your question about what does successful founders do, I think it's the ability to be. So the conclusion of that sort of interesting Twitter thread was like, be emotional about that mission and vision, and be really rational about how you get there, right? Be really rational about the inputs that are changing constantly, that you need to pivot and move things around and kill certain parts of the baby, chop its arm off and put a new one on because it wasn't working, to the point where, like, I am passionate about helping different shaped founders create their definition of successful business, right? And their definition, not the funder's definition, their definition. That's what I can, you guys know me, like, I can talk about that shit all day long. How we do that is I trust my team to figure out, how we create financial products that help them, how we create advisory that help them, how we price those things, how we structure the risk attached to them. Like, it's not that I don't care, it's just that it's not my forte. And if it was, that'd be frustrating, because I can't oscillate from being this dude up here who's sort of, trying to tell every founder that they should understand their options, and then going, that decimal place is off by one, and that's just not who I am. So, it's interesting, because a lot of founders are a product, like they're the core, they're the expert in their domain, and they are probably the best of the best, which is why they've created this startup around them. But unless they can elevate themselves to be the leader they need to be and hand off some of that sort of operational stuff, they're going to be the governor. They're going to be the red line. Like, the whole company's going to bounce off, and it's never going to be able to accelerate, change to the next
year. Be the
bottleneck
at some point.
Yeah, they become the bottleneck.
Yeah. I tell you what it feels like for me. I'm in a nice position with Athyna now, where I have excellent leaders around me that are much better than me in pretty much every department. We're still on the hunt for our head of product. We've had a couple of goes at it and didn't find the right person, so we kind of withdrew. But for me, it kind of feels like, public speaking or doing something really scary for the first time. So what I mean by that is, like, oh my God, I couldn't get up there and speak on stage. And then the first time you go up and you public speak, you're like, oh, that was nowhere near as bad as what I thought it was. And giving up, responsibility at Athyna, I feel like for me, it's the scariest thing in the world until you get like a month down the track, and then you go, oh, thank fuck for that. Like, it's a massive relief. It's that huge weight off your shoulders, and then you can go and do something more. Whatever the next thing you need to learn is, because there's always the next thing that you need to learn as you go up the, I guess, on the journey, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. It's it gets really but again, like, I like to bubble all this down, like, to your ego, which has sort of got, my favorite book is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. He talks about ego. There's sort of these three phases. The ego is fighting against you all the time. So as you're ascending, it's telling you negative stories about how you can't, you won't be able to do that, and all the signals are around how you won't be able to achieve what you're trying to achieve. Once you actually get up there and you are doing stuff, it's trying to plant the negative shit and work against you to sort of bring you back down again. And inevitably you will come down. And once you're down, it's sort of, like, I told you so kind of stuff. So our ability to acknowledge the fact that what you just said, Bill, around, I can't do that, like the self-limiting of I can't do that is like the minute you go, actually, it's just my fucking dumb lizard brain telling me I can't do that. And yeah, it's scary. But I think the difference between being scared and being fearful is really interesting as a founder. Like, fear just stops progress, right? You become fearful and shit comes to a grinding halt. Being scared, in my mind, scared and excited is the exact same thing. You just got to put a different label on it. And that's a very conscious decision a lot of times. Very consciously go, I'm fucking scared to hand this thing over, but I'm also excited to. Like you just said, I need a head of product. When I get one, I'm really scared that they're not going to be able to do it as good as we've done it up until now, or that they'll take it on a different path. But I'm actually excited from the fact that that's no longer my responsibility and I can go do other stuff. And, the oscillation between those two states is kind of, instantaneous, like you can be, as I said initially, you'll be in both states at the same time.
Yeah.
And like knowing which one to sort of put the label on and knowing which one to go, that's how actually it's this right now. And yeah, look, I am scared, but I'm also, excited. But, it's that fear, like, I think like fear crushes progression. Like it really just, everything comes to a grinding halt and you're like, I don't know what to do. And it really can't do it because I'm so afraid of what's about to happen.
I heard something awesome I'm doing some ketamine assisted therapy in San Diego at the moment for like mental health and anxiety, pretty much. It's super interesting stuff. That's like a whole podcast worth of another story. But the therapist there, her name's Simone, and she was talking about anxiety, and she's like, hey, I get anxiety all the time. I said, oh yeah, cool. Like, what's your history like? She goes, I battle with it. She goes, the way that I move out the door and go to that event, or the way that I, hand over that paper, or the way that I, whatever it is that she's anxious about, she goes, I've just got this rule within myself that I'm happy to do things scared. You know, I'm happy to rock up to that event and be scared. You know, be scared, feel shit, I'm scared right now, and I'm scared because this is the reason. But I'm going to do things scared. I'm not going to let the fact that I'm scared actually stop me from doing the things that I want to do in my life. And when she said that, I was like, fuck, that's pretty unreal. It really just, because you can apply it to anything. Just like what you just said then, it's like, you know, life is scary in a lot of ways, but it doesn't mean that you should limit yourself and the life that you live because you're a little bit scared.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Do you want to hear my ketamine story?
Oh, I love a good ketamine story.
So when I was at Amazon,
it's an Amazon ketamine story. This will be the clip for LinkedIn, I reckon.
So this is my boss Ian Gardner and I ran the first event called Venture Down Under, which was we took all the VCs to Wellington, not Wellington, Queenstown in Queensland, in New Zealand. So we organised this trip away. Like they paid for it, but we just like put on this ball a couple of days where there was a bunch of like really like great conversations around the VCs, and it was really amazing. And then on Saturday it was like, you want to go heli skiing, you want to go skiing, you want to go, like there's all these like hardcore events, and I'm like, I'm not a boarder, I'm not a skier, I'm a shit skier. Ian like has a house in Aspen, he's literally there right now, skis all the time, so he's like, we're gonna go skiing, and BC's like skiing. I'm like, okay, fine. So I went snowboarding, which I've done once before terribly. Anyway, I managed to sort of get going, it was all right, and then I was coming down the hill, I went to turn poorly and I landed and dislocated my elbow. So my right arm went 90 degrees the wrong direction.
Oh my god.
Crunch. So on the ski hill, so I'm like, fuck. So they go down, they put me in a little sled, they take me to on the mountain. They're like, looks like it's just disconnected. So I had morphine, I had 3 types of, I had the whistle thing, the green whistle thing you have at the dentist, I had morphine, and they doped me up on ketamine. And really? They put my arm back in, right? They put my arm back in on the mountain, but they're like, here, have some of this shit. And there's video evidence of me offering, the paramedics $100,000 worth of Amazon cloud credits. You know, and my team who were on the mountain with me are like, all right, we're going to come with you and make sure you're okay. And I'm just like, absolutely fucking gone down a K-hole.
My God.
While my arm was 90 degrees the wrong direction, and they fixed it. And then we went down the mountain.
We got to get Matt on ketamine more often. This is classic.
And then we went down the mountain in the most rickety, ambulance thing, bumpy, and it was fine. And my elbows like flapping around, and then got X-rayed. It was fine. And I was back at dinner with everyone like that night, and they're like,
"Oh, really?
You? Yeah.
Whoa, that's crazy."
There's my ketamine story.
Yeah, it's actually super. It's a crazy experience, but like I said, it's probably another story for another day. So what are the most exciting things in the Aussie tech scene for you, Matt? So, like, obviously Tractor, if there's things that you're seeing there, or like, I know you're an investor in some of the most exciting startups, I would say, that are kind of around right now. What are you seeing in the industry around, Asia Pacific that's just got you fired up?
Yeah, I think there's I'm excited to think that I think VC in Australia is finally getting to the point where they're actually backing proper VC risks. Like big rounds, big companies, big expectations. I think up until like the risk appetite has been a lot of capital, not much venture. That's not always true, but there's a lot of things where a lot of VCs, and the irony is, of course, Tractor is exactly enforcing that negative stereotype, which is, we want to see traction, we want to see revenue, we want to see whatever, and VC is more like, I got this crazy idea, let's go. So if you are a founder who effectively can tell a great story, you are likely to be able to get this stuff away. And I think that Mr. Yum, Linktree, good examples of things that global things that can go bananas straight away. And optimizing for Mr. Yum's a good example of sitting in the nexus between people did a bunch of this work, hospo people. Hospo, very few countries of the world, unless maybe France, like hospo is not a career, it's a thing you do while you're waiting for the other thing you actually want to do. So you've got this transient cost base, as a hospo owner, you've got this unreliable sometimes workforce, and especially in Australia post COVID, all the international people pissed off. So I got a lot of my some of my investors run some of the best pubs in Melbourne, and they're just like, we can't, like, this is really hard. So these platforms that can come in and actually do some of the grind, do some of that, enhance their workforce and take some of the repetitive, consistent processes off them, give a really good user experience, and then scale like crazy because the barrier to entry is really low. Like, that's exciting. That's really exciting to think that there's these big businesses that are built by a team, 2 blocks away from here in Melbourne. Is pretty exciting. I chair a company, so I've got April, I have about 50 angel investments, but I chair a company as well called QZIC, and we stream the audio over IP into Macca's and 7-Eleven and BWS and around the world. So we have IP-based speakers everywhere, and we can do some amazing stuff with messaging around helping these people, helping our customers talk to their customers, and we can measure the impact it has around the impact on sales, the impact on all kinds of stuff. We can adjust the music, adjust the messaging in real time. And that, like, as coming out of COVID, where nobody's been able to go in and have a good retail experience, like, people are thinking about how do we enhance IRL, right? Like, IRL is, like, people are probably going to, the habits we formed in lockdown about buying staples and boring shit is probably going to exist to the point where nobody really wants to, do that as a thing. But if the environments were less icky, and were more interesting, maybe they will. So we got a bunch of customers there, and that company is just gone bananas, and I'm really excited to
Awesome.
be able to help companies like that. And thinking about that retail experience, it's like, people are like, it's dead. Well, I don't think it's dead. I think it's going to be more important than ever for it to be really interesting rather than bland.
100%. Yeah, unreal. Look, before we get you out of here, I want to throw it over to Wallo, who's got a couple of quick rapid fire questions. So that we do every week. So over to you, and he will not sing them. They're just straight, regular.
I will try to not
question.
sing them. I will try. I had so many questions, but you answered them before I could ask. So it was like, let me just learn from the bosses. Yeah. So my first question is, what is one tool you cannot live without? For reference, someone said their cell phone, another person said breakfast. You can say
right. For me now, it's a combination. It's 2 things actually, and they're both exercise related. So my push bike, so I cycle to work, and it sort of gives me that really good break between going to the office and then going. It's only 3 kilometers from home. It only takes about 7 minutes, but I do take the long way. And another thing I've got is a thing called a Vitruvian Form, which is an IoT weightlifting device that I absolutely love. So every morning, I put up on my TV. It's in my lounge room. I can lift up to 200 kilos, which I can't lift 200 kilos, but I'm incrementally getting better.
You can lift 200 kilos?
I can do 100, but not 200. So those 2 things to me are like, those tools are the things I use to anchor the beginning of my day. So really important to me to do that throughout the work week.
Awesome, thank you. And my second question: what is your favorite book right now? Recently.
So
right now.
I read the same book in the Christmas holidays every year for the last 3 years, and it's Atomic Habits. So
I have that right there.
Yeah, cracker. I listen to it. I listen to it at fast speeds while I'm riding a lot of the time. And it just reminds me that the biggest takeaway for me from that book when I first read it was, it's easier to change the environment. Like, you change the environment, and then you can go and build a new thing. So in COVID, in the last lockdown here in Melbourne, I was coming to basically an empty office because the environment at home was stopping me getting work done. It was too close to the couch. It was the bad habits. It was bad habit stacking was off the chart. So I had to do a hard break and go, actually, over here is how I get work done. And an interesting takeaway there is I eat too fast, and I realize it's a negative habit stack. Like I'm consciously trying to unpick a 44-year-old habit here to try and slow down my consumption of food. And I'll finish my food. My family are like on second bite, and I have to sit around for an hour while they finish, and like, this is tedious. So like, how do I fix that? So and I think it's literally like just hoover up everything. So Atomic Habits is my absolute favorite book for both not only creating positive ones, but identifying negative ones.
Yeah, and my final question, what do you have any advice for entrepreneurs out there, trying to, I guess, pitch to investors of any sort, I guess?
Yeah, look, being a really good storyteller and be able to, talk about the future, being able to talk about the future as a founder that doesn't exist as a founder, it's really difficult for people that find it hard to embellish. I find it very hard to basically not talk about things that are real because they're not real yet. There's a cynical twist on this, is that you have to lie a little bit. It's not that you have to lie a little bit, it's that you have to be convinced that what you're talking about will be true. And without that, you won't raise a cent. Like, nobody will back you unless you believe that the future state you're talking about will be true. And it's really hard to even convince yourself. Like, you can pitch really badly because it's clear that you don't believe that to be true. So you need to find a way to get the future state you're talking about to be very true internally to you. Otherwise, no one will buy it.
Yeah, confidence is contagious. Thank you. Let me pass it back to Doc to finish off Bill Care.
Matt, where can people find you? Anything you want to plug? Websites, reaching out, anything in terms of that?
Yeah, so personally on Twitter at Matt Allen is probably where I'm most active. If you head over to tractorventures.com, we'd love to talk to any founders who are considering, the next phase of growth for their company, and would like to have, hopefully, as non-biased as possible view on some options for them. My team is really good at explaining to them, the implications of the decision they're about to make and this kind of people you might want around them. So tractorventures.com and Matt Allen on Twitter is probably best.
Awesome. Unreal. Well, that's pretty much all there is from our end, Matt. Really appreciate your time, mate. Super awesome to hear from somebody with such a vast array of experience like yourself, and just excited for the future of Tractor and the team. So that's it from us.
Thanks for having me. It was a really great conversation. Talk to you all soon.
Cool. And that's a wrap.